Lovely.
So the purpose of this evening is to, exactly the same as 4 weeks ago, to make sure we know all we need to know to get ourselves ready and prepared for summer school. So says he, seriously and pulling your leg at the same time. Therefore you've all begun your journal, have you not?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. I'm really pleased that nobody said, what's the journal, Gary?
What's the journal, Gary?
Very good. So last time we spent time thinking about how the module works. Tonight is in kind of two halves, basically. In the first half, we're going to think a little bit more about the two activities that you have to do. I'm going to go through to see if there are any questions about the activity assessment sheet, say a little bit more about theological reflection, and then say a little bit about group process. And we'll do one little kind of group process exercise, okay, which we'll do very calmly and very slowly. And we need to do some introductions and some apologies as well. So if this is right, there should be 7 people around every table. No table's got 8 people around it, has it? No. Because in this table, Ruth Walker's in the Isle of Man, so all wave at Ruth on the camera. Okay. And on this table here, Karen Andrews can't come this week, so all wave at Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Thank you. And on this table here, Robert Ike isn't here tonight, so we all wave for Rob. Okay. Because they'll watch this later. Debbie Dolby's on a train back from London, and the trains are a mess, so she'll get here at some point. You know who I am. I'm going to leave these 2 people to introduce themselves briefly. Well, if you want to do it that length, I'm open to that. You'd like to say who you are? Go on, Chris. You got this.
Okay, I'm Chris Halliday. I've been doing this stuff with All Saints for a few years and even longer with Exploring Faith Matters. So summer school is mostly what I do.
Have you done 5 now?
I think so.
Excellent. Ruth?
I'm Ruth Mock, and the last time I did summer school was when I was on one. So
Exactly.
yes, coming back to do theological reflection. But I'm currently the curate at St Matthew's Stretton and St Cross Appleton Hall in the Diocese of Chester.
And at the moment, the other 2 people who are helping with the reflection groups are Robin Pye, who's the vicar of Alderley Edge, and Beverly Onjay, who I think nearly all of you know because she's been teaching you Introduction to Christian Doctrine and History, including doing doctrinal questions, etc., etc. So they'll be here as well. At the moment, we've not actually, because of the way the schedule works, we've not had our staff tutorial meeting yet, which is going to happen next week. But the plan at the moment is it's likely that Group 1 will be looked after by Bev and Robin, and that Group 2 will be looked after by Ruth and Christopher, and that Group 3 will be looked after by me. It's the plan at the moment, but things change. I've said to you before, I said 4 weeks ago, we try and create the groups in such that they're as evenly balanced as possible in terms of people from different dioceses, they're evenly balanced in terms of gender, and they're evenly balanced in terms of, hopefully, because both things are not very good. Either nobody knows anybody in the group at all, or people have actually got quite close friendships. Sometimes that's not very conducive to this type of work either. So that's how you're kind of mixed up, okay? And there are quite a lot of, this year, and believe me, this does change every year. This year, the predominant group is actually Diocese of Chester people. So several of the groups have got quite a lot of Chester people in, and then in different years it varies in different ways. So we're going to do something about the way the groups work and the way the assessment works in the first half. Then we'll have a little break, and then we'll do something in the second half about actually helping you spend a little bit of time in your own group thinking about how your TR group might work, and we'll sit in on those, and also just looking forward to a little bit about how your worship group might work. So I've handed out to you the worship design groups. I think I said to you 4 weeks ago, the worship design groups and the TR groups are exactly the same, because it just saves a lot of time. So we do have, if you remember from the timetable, 2 complete sessions devoted to preparation time for the worship when you get there. I think they're on the Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening, so there's plenty of time there in which to organise the worship. But I'm going to give you a bit of time tonight as well, so if nothing else you can perhaps set a few hairs running. And as you can see from this piece of paper, there's a forum being set up for each individual group. So that means that after tonight you can actually, if you want to, you can be in touch with people if you're thinking about getting ready for summer school. It's particularly important, and I did it deliberately this way because there are at least 3 people who can't come tonight. So each group's going to have to take into account when we do our work later on that person is not here. And when we start thinking about who might be facilitating reflections, etc., etc., we need to leave our options open because the 4 people who are here don't get a vote, inverted commas. You see what I mean? It's quite kind of tricky. What I'm going to suggest when we get into the second half is that at least it could be helpful if at least a couple of you in each group said, well, I know so-and-so who's not here and I'd be quite happy to work with them. And we're going to try and see if we can begin to look at tonight at what the pairings for the facilitation might look like. But I use the word might again because when we meet next week, we might have other reasons for pairing people in different kind of pairs. But once we do that, a thing will come out that says these are the definitive pairs. But we try and do it by, as far as possible, by negotiation, so that people are not plonked into groups. But there are sometimes very good reasons for why people are in different groups, and also for why we pair people up. So, to utter a cliche, for example, it's not often the most useful way in a group to put the 2 noisiest people together leading one TR, and then another TR led by the 2 quietest people, though that itself can be interesting. So we just have to think all the time, what can we do here and at summer school whereby all of us will learn the most? It's not even about somebody shining the most, it's all about actually what can we do whereby we all learn the most, and that includes the staff as well, because every time we do this we learn something new. Okay? So folks, for the next few minutes I'm led by you really. At the moment I've got in my hand the Practical Skills Theological Reflection Assessment piece of paper, okay, which I gave you 4 weeks ago. So it's whether you have any questions about this, and then after that I want to do an exercise about group process, and then see if you get any questions about the group process, and that's the first half of the evening. Okay? So, any questions about this? Because what we don't want is people getting into summer school and saying, well, I wish you'd told me that, Gary. You know.
Well, we'll probably say that as well anyway.
Of course you will. Of course you will.
Just to keep you updated.
Well, here's a cheat, for example. I didn't know I was going to say this until 5 seconds ago. If you look at the delivery of practical skills box, look at the 3rd one down. Yeah. So, sorry? Sorry?
Which one?
Delivery of practical skills, 3rd one down.
I know which I didn't
There's one says theological reflection skills, the other one says group process. But I only put 1 copy on each table because I handed them out 4 weeks ago. But if you've got your iPad, you could look them up in the pastoral care section.
Are we looking at the group skills, Barry?
Now we're looking at the theological reflection skills. How can Louise was the only person sensible enough to bring a fan? I think I won't be on this table. Oh, nice. So, folks, delivery of practical skills, creating a physical learning environment. Okay. I have to confess, if we're doing 4-source model, position-wise, this is a bit of a bee in my bonnet. That often people don't. In adult education, often somebody will teach in the same room, and the room will be used exactly in the same way by exactly each person who uses it, without thinking, how would be the best way to organise this room in terms of the activity or the learning that we are doing today. So as a tiny example, as I say, I only just thought about this 10 seconds ago. That's why I brought some water. I thought, it's going to be dreadful up here. So what can we do? Well, if we had some water, it would help. It's not going to change the world, but it kind of helps. So it's like you're doing it's like leading a Bible study group, and the Bible study group happens to be taking place in a room in your church hall, and the room in your church hall actually seats 50 people, but there's only 8 of you coming. Would you put all the 8 people in 4 corners of the room? Okay. I was about to say it's not rocket science, but it obviously is. Anyway, that's what that kind of thing means. It means if you're, in terms of what you've got planned for your session, or in terms of what emerges in your session, do you take responsibility for the place being conducive to the activity you're about to enter into. And of course, the easiest thing is just to do it the way the last people left it. But is that the best way? Do you see what I mean? So it's just thinking about these things. So all I'm saying is there are these, what is it, 5 different boxes: practical skills, knowledge and understanding, applying thinking, reflective practice. Are there any things you want to ask about? So what do you mean by that, Gary? Because it's all, some of it's not jargon, but it's shorthand to say we're having to write a paragraph.
Can you explain what you mean by gatekeeper?
Yeah, but that's on the other sheet, isn't it?
Is that on the, yeah. Yeah, sorry. We've just moved on there. We're just flicking.
That's on, that is that on the small group process sheet? Yes. We'll come to that in a bit.
Okay.
Well, that's the one you've given out.
But you've given,
No.
you gave one.
I gave one theological reflection skill and 1 group process to each table.
Yes.
So you've got the theological one.
Because you all had a copy 4 weeks ago, and the copies are on Moodle. Yeah? I do have 2 more spare ones here. Theological reflection. Like one lady. Ding ding. Yeah.
Creativity with chosen model of reflection in the bottom box.
Creativity,
Yeah.
the chosen model of, yeah?
What sort of thing is that thinking about?
What that means about, and that's a very interesting one to mention, and Christopher might have a view on this one as well. One of the things I frequently say to people is if you go back to the Killen and De Beer, the Art of Theological Reflection book, and here's like a pub quiz. Anybody remember the title of the last chapter? It's called Designing Your Own Theological Reflection Models. So in other words, they write a book, and they're very keen that they're saying this is something you should do, and they put all their different ways of doing it. And right at the end, the last bit is they say, but don't just do what we did. You know, take the heart of what we're doing, and develop your own things. So on the bits of paper, like the chapter I've handed out, you've got the 4-source model with 6 different methods on, because you've got culture, tradition, experience, three different ones, and position. And what I keep trying to say to people is, particularly when people get new to this, if you're not careful, they get hung up with the steps, because they think, if I don't do it exactly like the steps, I'm going to get it wrong, in inverted commas. But to be fair, the steps are really, really useful when you've never done it before. But the point at which either A, you don't worry about the steps because you basically understand it is a conversation between 4 sources, is also the point at which you might say, what we could do is this, and you just change the method. Yeah, because the method is not sacrosanct. In fact, nothing sacrosanct. So, to be honest, Elaine, and this is where Christopher might have a comment, year after year, it's not unusual for a lot of people not to score highly in that area. It's a bit like the difference between very good and excellent. You know what I mean? If you can actually, either by something you say which guides your group as a participant, or when you're actually doing your own, that you do something which we recognise, oh, there's someone trying to just, you know, push the model and method out a little bit into something a bit more creative. Christopher?
Yeah, I can only think of twice when it's happened.
Right, yeah.
In the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, a couple of years ago, I remember someone started the whole thing completely differently. And the interesting thing is, I can't even now remember. I remember I was in Lancaster. I remember it started differently, but to this day, I still can't remember how it started differently. Because in a sense, that wasn't important. The point was that somebody thought something different, and they kind of put it in.
Okay.
And a couple of years ago, no, it wasn't in my group or Christopher's group. I think it was in Andrew Rudd's group. Somebody from, these are people you know actually probably, I probably said this 4 weeks ago, Peter Selby from Chester and Mike from, is he Manchester or Blackburn? Blackburn, works in Manchester, is that right? Okay. They did their version of the theological reflection model that's in the Jane Leach book. Yeah, so if you remember, there's that one there in the Jane Leach book, which is one of the things you can do. They didn't just do it straight. The two of them had a little chat, and they decided how they were going to change it. And they did. And I wasn't even there, but I remember that they did that because it doesn't happen that often. But don't be frightened. Yeah? Because the worst thing that can happen is it will go wrong. You know what I mean? It's not about getting it right though, it's about, you know, getting better.
What does going wrong look like, Gary?
Going wrong looks like when they say, Well, that was when we do the unpacking afterwards. They say, well, that was a mess. We made a complete mess of that. I got completely confused. I don't know what the steps are. I don't understand about questions. And what tends to happen is all of us in the unpacking then learn something. And I think this is true of formation for ordination full stop actually and licence ministry. No one in their sensible, safeguarding adult mind would set up any exercise for you to fail. Unless of course you're a fan of Star Trek, but that's not a matter altogether. Okay. But we all know that in actual fact we often learn more when something goes wrong than when something goes right. So if you do whatever it is, if you bake a cake for the first time and it goes right, you'll probably mistakenly think you know how to bake a cake because you can guarantee the second or third time it'll be a complete flop. It's only when it's a complete flop that you then think, what did I do wrong? And then you start thinking about how to make a cake and eventually you get better at making cakes. And in future, when it goes wrong, you turn the wrongness into an advantage. Oh, that's a mess, I think it'll be an eaten mess then. You know what I mean? You just kind of, you have to work with it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that page is done.
Yeah.
Go on, please.
Can I ask a timing question, having
Timing
just
question.
done the practice session last
Yeah,
Saturday? Using your four source model,
Yeah.
in order to get a decent amount of time to do theological reflection, when would you have to get the image agreed by?
Sorry, Louise, do you speak up a little?
Yeah.
So-
Say it again.
Sorry, can you speak
In
up?
order to do the four source model well, at what point would you need to have the image agreed in order to have plenty of time for theological reflection? Because I have a feeling that we made it hard getting the image
30 minutes probably.
right.
And well, the groups might do it in 20 if they get a new one.
Okay.
But Louise reminds me of another point really, and again I said this 4 weeks ago. I recognise there's a real danger and a risk here. The real danger and the risk is, because we're asking you to work with a tool, a tool is like a hammer or a screwdriver or a lawnmower, because we're asking you for a tool for which quite a number of you are actually still fairly new to it. The danger is, summer school becomes about getting the tool right.
Yeah.
But the tool is only a tool to understand, to enable us to engage in issues around pastoral care. So there are two things to go. Louise's question is perceptive, yeah. Getting to the image as early as possible is obviously going to get you well down the road. The second thing to think, if you've got 2 hours, you need to be thinking, we need the whole TR, the TR bit of it, wrapped up in 60 to 75 minutes. Because then we want to really, really talk about the pastoral care issue. But the danger is, because people are new and nervous, and because we all like talking, we end up filling the 2 hours with trying to get the 16-step process exactly right, as if somehow that will gain us some points. Well, it doesn't really. You know what I mean? And I think I said this again 4 weeks ago, and I know I said it in some of the practice sessions I've done. And I will produce a handout about this. I nearly did for tonight, but I didn't have time. It is also perfectly possible, using the four-source model, to get to the image and then not ask any interrogatory questions, but actually simply then look at tradition, then look at culture, then look at position. The business about asking the interrogatory questions is basically, and this is where it links to your module in Introduction to Christian Doctrine and History. The point about asking the questions is, you do go down more deeply theologically because you're asking theological doctrinal questions. Incarnation, redemption, atonement, resurrection, which is what the essence of the Christian faith. But sometimes you might want to go a bit lighter than that because you might want to look at the sweep of tradition and the sweep of culture and the sweep of people's different positions, because you want to get to the substance of the matter, which is actually what are the implications theologically for pastoral care about what we've been talking about today. So all the time you're thinking, can we get there a bit quicker? And then says, if you're not careful, you get obsessed with getting there quicker. I mean, it just becomes an intuition thing partly. But you can set your stall out. And what you can also do in setting your stall out is to get what I call a contract. So rather than just facilitating the theological reflection yourself or with your partner, you say to the group, well, should we try and get to the image in 30 minutes? Should we try and get to the end by half an hour? Because if everybody agrees, it gives you permission, when sometimes we all do our little red herrings and time waste, to kind of push the group on. We did say we were going to move on, so is it okay? Yeah, we did say that, okay, and then people will move on. Because people do like talking, don't they? To see you standing there. Okay? Should we go to the group process stuff then? Okay. So what I want to do this just to get stop me from talking, and to get us about thinking. Just do a little exercise. And what I need is, I need 8 volunteers, okay? And this is like a DIY party. I need 8 volunteers to form a little group that I'm going to set a little task, which they're going to do for 10 minutes while we watch what they're doing, the rest of us, okay? And it's not a secret. The task is quite simple, and I have here 7 or 8 bits of paper, and each bit of paper tells each person when they volunteer what it is they are supposed, what kind of role they're supposed to take in the next 10 minutes in this group. Okay? It's not role playing as such, but on the other hand, you do have to. Some of you might not have to be yourself depending on which piece of paper I give you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And what we need is I need 8 of you in a circle here with a chair. There are 3 chairs here already, and then I'll give the pieces of paper out. The rest, I'll say a bit more. Then the rest of us will simply watch, and after we watch it, we'll talk about it. And I want to think about the difference between content and process. Okay? For some of you, this will be like old hat. Oh, I know exactly what he's talking about. Some of you thinking, what on earth is he talking about? So, 8 people in a circle. I'll just go out the room for a few minutes. 8 people.
No, there's 8, I think. It's slightly different, so I can see. The worst place in
I can count, that makes 5. That makes 6. Oh, look, Steve's limping across the room. Look, you've shamed him into it. Look, just all that.
Just take that one.
Excellent. How many is that? 7. Come on, folks. All these super confident audience. Come on. I know.
I was being idle.
Can you make the shape a nicer circle now? Excellent. You don't show anybody else what's on your piece of paper. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I will.
Doesn't get the pieces.
So, I'll give you yours first because you might need a bit longer to think about yours, and there's that as well. Okay. Okay. So what else have we got? You do that one. Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you do? Oh, hang on. Can you do that one? Yeah. Can you do that one? Okay. Can you do that one? And oh dear, I've got left it. Can you do that one and can you do that one? Yes, I know. That's because it's also. I mean, this is a bit weird because, as you'll discover in a minute, who knows what will happen in the next 10 minutes. This is just a game. Think of it as a game, okay? But basically, what I want the rest of us to do is to look at what we think was going on. And part of the trick for those of us who are watching is to try and work out what is on each piece of paper that I've given to each person, just by what you see, as opposed to somebody showing it to you. Does that make sense? Yeah. And you've got, when I say go, you've got 10 minutes. Does that make sense? Is everybody okay? Now, let me ask one more question. Does anybody not want to do this? I'm being serious. Now I've said that, does anybody not want to do it? Because it's absolutely fine, just go and get someone to replace you. I should have said that. Is everybody,
This is where we all go. Right, that's it. We volunteer.
we're going to walk off. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And all I'll do, unless someone's about to get killed, is I will stop you. I will stop you after 10 minutes. So, off you go.
Good evening. It's lovely to be here with
Is
you.
it?
A little bit hot and
Is it a
sweaty.
good evening though? Really?
Oh, the sun is shining.
Yeah, but come on. Can you think of anyone you'd rather be less?
Well, actually, you never know. We'd all like to be sat outside in the shade with a nice long glass
Yeah,
of
well,
something.
come on, get on with it and we
Right,
can get
okay.
home, please.
Okay. Let's just take a moment. Just be still. Just be still. going to read a few words. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God.
I suppose you can keep time.
Can you think of any other people that would be blessed?
Probably-
That's why we should.
Probably me. Yeah.
Are you blessed, Steph?
No.
Not at all. Even a little. No. What about you, Anita? Are you blessed? Steve? Elaine? You're blessed. Are you blessed in many ways, Elaine?
Always is.
Can you
isn't it?
see that these are blessed as well?
I can, yes.
Louise?
Well, I can see that you've read out the Beatitudes and you're asking people whether they feel that they're blessed or not.
Are you blessed?
I'm
You're blessed. Jeremy?
Well, it's the wrong question, really, isn't it? If, say, this was 2,000 years ago, blessed are those who mourn. Try going down where I live and saying that on a night like this. Then just are you blessed? What kind of self-absorbed question is that?
It's a difficult one. There are times when people do feel that nothing is a blessing.
Maybe tonight's the night. Put that on my head as well, for goodness sake.
It's my birthday. I'm blessed. I've got friends who love me.
Well, all about you again.
I'll remind you of that later, Jeremy, when I share cake. It is all about me today. Kate?
I think I'm very conscious of just how blessed I am, but I'm also just aware perhaps that many people are feeling like that tonight. I'm wondering what's going on, particularly for Steve and Anita, and if they felt they wanted to share anything. I mean, obviously, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I'm Steph, really. I mean, I'm not going to therapy, am I?
But we're here to
we
share.
are here, and we are here together. So I'm just wondering if, you know,
Anita, are you okay?
Yeah.
You seem very quiet tonight. Is there anything that we could do to help? No.
No, I'm fine.
So, Steve, you are unusually quiet today. I don't think I've ever seen you quite so quiet. Is there something that we can help you with? No.
That's your phone. Why don't you time everything?
Well, it
I
seems
feel
to me that it would be
Overmanaged.
It would be helpful to know. I noticed that it's very
Can you make it
difficult
go
for you to
fast?
run the group with people not really wanting to engage.
It is difficult because we've all chosen to be here. We've not been forced to be here.
It's chosen duress, isn't it?
You made a choice to walk through the door. You made a choice to sit on a chair, to be part of the group.
That's the Bible reading.
Okay?
Blessed are those who sit on chairs. Is that the next verse?
Blessed are those who have the opportunity to sit on chairs.
Very clever, actually. No reply to that.
What about blessed are those who hunger and thirst? We live in a world where there is so much hunger. How does it feel that you are blessed if you are hungry?
Blessed because we're full, I think.
But it says we will be filled.
Really? Do you want me to?
Would you like to?
No, no.
Yeah.
We do a good job leading, actually. Thank you.
Can I pass that to you, Jeremy? Would you like to read and lead us in one of the verses?
Blessed are the peacemakers, maybe? How do you think you've done on that tonight?
We're not arguing. I'm more concerned about those who are really keeping the peace
3 minutes to go, yeah.
and not sharing.
How are you feeling this evening, Jack?
You still feeling
I'm
nice?
still feeling blessed.
I am, yes, I'm still feeling blessed and enjoying listening to you all, but you don't feel there's anything particularly that you'd want to add. I mean, again,
I think we all need to be honest.
Well, I'll cut to the chase. I'd like to get home for the second half. That's really what this is about.
What time's the second half?
About 8:15.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Make sure we have.
I'm just surprised people are reading this when there's football on. Please.
You see, Jeremy, that's why I feel I'm blessed. I'm not watching the football.
Priorities.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit off kilter there.
Probably feeling more blessed than the German team at the moment. But,
Well,
you know.
maybe yes. One thing we can agree on.
Anita, can you not think of a blessing for you at all? Can you not? Nothing to say. Okay.
So it seems like a bit of a struggle here, that you're trying to lead a Bible study on blessing, but actually, at least 2 members of the group really would rather be watching the match. No?
Well, they've chosen to come, and I'm struggling with that, Louise.
It's a struggle.
You say two. No, perhaps the others are just too polite to say.
Just wondering if it's something about the topic was difficult, or if there's something else that you want to feels that they really need to be expressing this evening.
Think about the football match. Would you want to see them blessed, or would you want both teams to feel as though they weren't blessed, and that they ended up with the result they didn't want, or wouldn't deserve?
Why are we talking about football?
Because Jeremy wanted to talk about football rather than blessings.
Talk about football, let's go home so I can watch football.
Is there something else you would like to be talking about?
Are you struggling to be part of this tonight, Steph? No. I think it would be a really good idea if we just spent a few minutes praying for the person next to us. Just quietly.
On my left, please.
Both sides.
Not out loud.
In your heart, Jeremy. Find something that you feel a blessing from that person from.
Oh God, why did I sit in this seat?
Oh no.
Thank you very much. You can take the bits of paper with you, but just hang on to them for a few seconds.
Is that the basis that whatever you actually wind up doing?
Be on stage.
Can I just say that maybe Jeremy heard what you said? Just went over the groups.
What if you don't like them, you Jeremy, it's a good job I love you.
Are you sure you're still there?
I've got my back to you.
Yes.
Well, this is side to my right.
Where
do we need to be facing? I'll sit with the back.
Yeah, just, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. I've lost me. Sorry, I've lost me. What's the name? Yeah, thingy bob that fixes it. Right, so it's just I will come back to the people in the group in a minute, and I will thank them profusely, honestly. But for those of you who are watching, does anyone want to make a stab at what they think was written on anybody's piece of paper?
Jeremy wasn't the peacemaker, no. Yeah, be awkward.
Pessimist.
Hogging the, taking the limelight.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Disruptor. Anybody else? Let's do Jeremy's character, not Jeremy himself. Anybody else want to make a start on his piece of paper?
He was the voice of negativity, wasn't he?
Summer school's a long time.
So what did you say? What did yours say, Jeremy?
I think probably Lizzie's was the nearest. My aim was to be the centre of attention.
Be the centre of attention. Yeah.
Oh, right, so you chose to interpret it that way, that's really good.
Yeah.
You could have been
Fascinating.
Yeah, it could have been constructive.
Yes, that's right, you could have been, oh, I know all the answers sort of thing.
So straight away, for example, even though we knew there was a process going on, to many of us, it's not actually obvious exactly why that person is doing that. Yeah. Okay.
You
So-
succeeded.
Yeah. Somebody else have a look at another character in the group.
I got the impression
Yeah.
Steph didn't want to be there at all.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Happy, go lucky type.
You didn't have
I didn't have a role.
She didn't have a
which
role.
was even actually
Alright.
quite hard.
Elaine
I
was
didn't
just
know what
being
I was supposed
normal.
to say. I have not written those. What am I supposed to say? Am I supposed to say the right things, or am I supposed to say the character? So
She just.
Hold on, happy go lucky was a good one.
Yeah. What about Steph's piece of paper then? Can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Indifferent.
Yeah. Sort of bored, really.
Okay, Steph, tell us what you had.
Block any suggestions made, but not
Yeah.
any suggestions were actually made, so it was a bit
Indeed, because somebody else has been the centre of attention, so it's quite difficult to get in.
Yeah.
You can get somebody else then, another character. We've got 4 more to go, I think.
I felt like Anita was upset with someone.
Yeah. What do we think was on Anita's piece of paper?
I got a problem with someone else.
Got a problem with somebody else in the group.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Turned away.
Turns away. Did you ever
Yeah.
notice when she was turning away?
Probably when I was talking.
When the leader was
Yeah,
talking.
interacting.
When the leader was talking, got it down.
Jeremy said probably when he was talking, I said no, it was the opposite. That was when she was most engaged.
Indeed. Right. So just think about who's in the group in terms of gender balance then. There weren't very many men. So what did you say, Anita?
Ignore women.
Ignore women. Ignore women in the group. It's got 6 women in it and 2 men.
Right.
It's quite a tall task, quite frankly, actually. But again, you see, none of us is quite sure what's going on. Why is she doing that? Okay. What? I'm going to do thank yous about 10 times now. We thank Nicola for a wonderful piece of work for not running out of the circle and getting somebody else instead. This is also quite interesting. What do you think it said on Nicola's piece of paper?
Remain positive.
Remain positive. Anybody else?
I assumed it said group leader or something.
Close. Yeah. I mean, very close. Very close. Anybody else?
Trying to pull people together, facilitate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it saying? Go on, Nicola.
Leader Bible study on.
Read about it again.
It was the best Bible study on the Beatitudes I've ever
What I found interesting, and this is not a criticism, it's just a complete observation, because there's a thing about group process, which what we're trying to dip our toe into, is that when you get caught up in a process, It doesn't matter who you are, sometimes you just get, you know, it doesn't matter, even if you're very aware, sometimes some process just gets you because that's the way process works. There is something you can do about it, but sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it. So, for example, at no point, probably because of the pressure under and dumped into it, did Nicola actually tell the group what she was doing. We just opened the Bible.
Well, I decided against that based on not saying what it was.
Oh, indeed, yeah,
So there was a
indeed.
conscious
indeed,
effort
yeah,
on that
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. But in a sense, that kind of reminds me that sometimes when we gather in groups, particularly where people know each other, where we actually forget to remind ourselves what we're here for. We just get on. We assume we all know what we're doing. We get on with it. Yeah. Well, because I hadn't told anybody, and because Nicola hadn't invited them, because that's outside the scheme of the little exercise, nobody else actually knew why they were here, except they'd actually come to some form of Bible study or a Bible study group.
I actually went to a meeting like that over Easter.
Did you?
Yeah, and it was
Brenda,
just...
you're blessed.
No way, nobody told us
Yeah.
what was going on.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like,
right.
so I was sitting there like I didn't know who anyone else in
Yes.
the room was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the heck the format was.
Yeah.
I didn't know how long it was going to be. I didn't even know what we were doing. People
Yeah.
started
Right.
talking and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
what's the point of this? What am I meant to be getting? It was just the weirdest, bizarrest, wonderful Christian experience.
And you notice tonight going outside the group and thinking about what happened tonight, for example. You know, I was thinking tonight, what sounds odd. What do I do about Christopher and Ruth? Because in terms of the rest of us, they're the outside people at the moment. Well, we won't be outside people for very long. But we also thought we'd have some worship. But one of the things I always feel strongly about, wherever possible, because you can't always make it happen, I don't like the idea of worshiping with people at one level you don't know. So short as they were, we'd actually did some introductions beforehand. But the flip side of that is I didn't get all of you to introduce yourselves to them so either. Because there's 24 of us. So all that adds to the process that's going on in the room, isn't it, you see? So even this week, you know, weather aside, we as a group of 24 people are not the same as that group of people who met 4 weeks ago. Because there's a couple of people not here, and there's some people who weren't here before who are here. So all the dynamics, not all, but a number of the dynamics in the group change. And yet, most of us are the same group of people here for the same purpose, which is to get ready for summer school. So who have we got left then? Who else have we got left?
Steve.
Kate's, any idea what Kate's piece of paper said?
Something about asking open questions or eliciting.
Encouraging participation or
Yeah.
I think it's more of like nosiness rather than you do want to tell us your life story.
That was what was really difficult. So it was trying to
the juicy bits.
Well, it was trying to enable people to speak. So I assumed it would be trying to enable people to speak because other people were talking and people weren't getting a word in.
Yeah.
Actually, it turned into, hang on a minute, why aren't these people talking? And I was worried about what you said. I thought, I don't want to put these people on the spot because there could be something really horrendous going on. But I've got to say something because I've got a piece of paper that says I'm going to do it.
You did it very well, Kate.
Sorry, try to enable people to speak. But not make them
trying
speak.
to enable people to speak is
determined not
sometimes
to.
one of the hardest things to do in a group. I know this is only 10 minutes, but as a rule of thumb, what you don't keep pointing out to people is that they're not talking. Because actually, if there's one thing designed not to get people to talk, is to say, well, you haven't said anything. I mean, on the other hand, I think Nicola was saying, which is kind of like a halfway house, something like, implying you know the person quite well, saying, well, you're fairly quiet this week is a slightly more gentle thing, because of course that means there's history, that means you've been here for 10 weeks, and normally this person is very noisy. So, but even then, if this was your house group or your Bible study group, you're more likely to try and ask that question when nobody else is around, actually. Because if you do that, you put people on the spot. Okay. So that was Kate. So what was it? What yours just said. And what asked Steve? What did Steve say? What do you think Steve's piece of paper said?
Say nothing.
Steve?
Yeah.
Try not to talk. I was cast against time. So try not to say anything.
Then it was Louise's role.
And Louise. Sorry, Louise. I forgot Louise. What was Louise's piece of paper say?
No, that was a coincidence. That was because I thought 10 minutes. Well, given what was on my paper, I needed to know how much time had gone. On the odds that we had a profitable conversation.
Well, we were trying to review what was going on, though, wasn't she? She was trying to analyse what was trying to, almost like an objective view of what was happening.
I think you were summarising.
Feedback.
Oh,
trying to take that for the group.
clarify and summarise the
conversation.
Okay.
What was fascinating though for me, and I appreciate you may not find this fascinating, in terms of talking about content and process, although that's what Louise said, what did you say exactly again? Just make it wrong. Summarise the conversation. What Louise actually did on a number of occasions was actually say to the group, say a little bit to the group about what the dynamic she thought was going on in the group. So she said at one point, maybe she said to the leader, well, you're trying to lead her and got the people not joining in for whatever reason. That's a comment on the process that's taking place in a group. And sometimes in groups, that is a very helpful thing to do because other people haven't noticed. Yeah? And so what you're doing is, you're not even saying it's good or bad, you're just saying this is the way it is. And I think one of the things I want to say about group process is that group process is in itself not necessarily bad, it just is. Sometimes the process will feel good to you, and sometimes the process will feel bad to you, but process itself is not a dirty word, it's just a thing that happens. So let me just round this session up in a couple of sessions, then we'll have our little mini break. Some of you who've done group process work before will know these two very simple pieces of theory I'm going to give you. The first is that any group is like an iceberg. Yeah? So somebody tell me the stat about icebergs. What's the percentage of people below?
10% to 90%.
So 1/10 is above, 90% is below. That's a slight exaggeration, but people would say often some groups are like that the 1% are the words that came out of people's mouths that you would put on a script if you recorded what people said. But 90% of what's happening is actually under the water. So 90% of what's happening is not the words that come out of people's mouths, it's the way that people relate to each other in the group. Like, for example, someone's had a row with somebody, or someone just doesn't like women, or someone just doesn't like men, or somebody actually wants to be the centre of attention. Therefore, you take whatever words come out of their mouth with a pinch of salt. They're only saying those words in order to get your attention. Do you see what I mean? So basically, process is the stuff that happens underneath. Words are what come out of our mouth. And the trick is to try and do two things: using the words that you hear, and looking around at the group. But more importantly, I still find this difficult to put into words, actually sensing what is happening in the group. So there comes a point at which those of us who are innately good at this, or those who have practiced this, what you do is you try and stop your brain not to ignore people, but to think beyond what they're saying, and saying, when that person says that, how do I feel? And how you feel, and literally I'm sticking my hand across my tummy there, how you feel is an indicator of what's actually happening in the group, as opposed to the words that are coming out of somebody's mouth. You see what I mean? And if I just repeat what I said again, some people are innately good at this. They're just that kind of people. I was never ever innately good at this as a teenager or as a young adult. It was something I had to work at really hard, and then one day the kind of light bulb goes and you begin to understand what it means to feel what's actually happening in the room as opposed to what people are saying. Okay? So that's the first piece of theory, it's like an iceberg. The second piece of theory is that there are three things going on in a group at any one time. The most obvious thing, of which those who concentrate on words understand, is the task. We are here to do a Bible study group. Yeah? So that's the first thing, T. The second one is I, which stands for the individual, is that everybody in a group has individual needs. And you'll have met this in your own parishes where perhaps you've got someone who has particularly difficult or demanding needs. You know, you can't just say, well, we're going to stick to the task and ignore the fact that that person's, not very well or got a problem with their sister or whatever it might be. So there's a sense in which you do have to sometimes talk to people to deal with their individual needs because they're individuals. Okay, so that's T, the second one is I. The third one is M, so I always remember it stands for Tim. The third one is what can I do or what can we do to make the group work, which I call maintenance. Yeah, so what kind of things can I do to make the group work? So at its simplest level, for example, maintenance with an M might mean suggesting we take a break because the group is tired. Or it might mean, for example, offering to make everybody else in the group a cup of tea because that will actually help the group go. So there are three things going on. The task of the group, what an individual actually needs, and also the maintenance of the group. And I have a little mantra which I use, which says that unresolved process blocks the task. So unresolved process blocks task. So if individual needs are very high, in either one or a few people, or if no one is paying any attention at all to the maintenance of the group, despite the fact that the group is task orientated, it won't get the job done. Because the individual needs are too high and the maintenance needs of the group are too high. And therefore it has to be a balance of all those things. It cannot just be completely task orientated. Okay? So on the piece of paper that says group process activity, which I haven't got here, somebody before asked me about gatekeeping. A gatekeeper is the person who allows other people to come in. A gatekeeper might also be a person who stops people from coming in. So a gatekeeper at the appropriate moment, and the appropriate moment can only be discerned, never calculated, the gatekeeper might bring a person in who's trying to struggle to get in, either because they're shy, or they're quiet, or someone's having a rant and a rave in the opposite corner, or there's something going on. And you find a way of bringing them in by asking, not just asking them a question, perhaps making them a comment, but you bring them in. But conversely, a gatekeeper might also from time to time shut out the noisy, demanding person. So the role, you're literally on the gate, looking after the gate, letting people in, letting people out, stopping people getting in, perhaps not stopping people getting out, which certainly that's what it means. So on this piece of paper, all these things here are designed, all these questions here are designed to assess your understanding of what's actually happening in the group. So do you have a good insight, a good intuition about what's going on, or are you completely oblivious to the fact that, you know, this person wants to be the centre of attention just because it's their ego? And you just think, oh, they're lively. You know what I mean? So that's what this is about. Any questions? That was a bit fast. Okay. Should we have a little mini break then? We can kick off at about 20 past again?